Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Chartock, and welcome to the Linda. We love having you here. And I must say that every one of you who's come out tonight in this mess is going to be rewarded with great financial reward. You will be blessed. You will be blessed. No question about it. This is the house that so many WAMCers money built. And I was walking along the street one day, and it was empty, and somebody called and said, "You know anybody who wants to buy it?" We bought it for $75,000. And then we put probably $2.5 million, into making it work. But I do want to thank you for being here and for honoring us by coming out on a night like this. It's really terrific. I want to introduce Dave Morrell, who is the SUNY Director of Benefits. I have to say one thing about Tia Kreff, and then I'll get off, and that is that it is really, there was the guy on television who says, baseball has been good to me. Tia Kreff has been good to me. I woke up one morning in my first job at the Eagleton Institute of Politics at Rutgers, and I said to the boss, they want to know how much I should invest, what percentage in stocks. He said, put it all in. And I did. 40 years later, I woke up. It was good. And it was good. Thank you all for being here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Morrell. I'm the Director of University Benefits for the State University of New York. And SUNY is very pleased to help present this event tonight. We are working in collaboration with Tia Kreff in doing so, celebrating 50 years of the SUNY Option Retirement Program, which was founded in 1964 and is one of the largest defined contribution public pension systems in the country. For those entire 50 years, Tia Kreff has worked with us in supporting us, and we're pleased tonight to be able to support this event here in the Albany community. For those of you who are SUNY employees or state employees or work for any public agencies in the state of New York, we offer a retirement program which will work to provide for your retirement needs both now as well as into the future and into retirement. And we do so in conjunction with our partners around the state, including Tia Kreff, and we like to, wherever possible, do what we can to work with local communities around the state, keeping things here in New York and providing what we can by way of services, education, and assistance to the greater community. So thank you very much to NPR and to Tia Kreff for hosting this event this evening. And thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, NPR presents Family Matters, Your Financial Lifetime. The information provided is for educational advice, investment advice, trading advice, but it is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. We want to thank you for coming out to spend the night with us here tonight. We appreciate it greatly. And now, please give a warm welcome to your NPR hosts, David Green and Robert Smith.
Of course, when we've done this before, we've failed to actually introduce ourselves because we're like, oh, yeah. But of course, on radio, you have to actually say who is who, right?
Who are you?
I am Robert Smith. I'm with Planet Money, and this is
David Green from Morning Edition. And it's fun to be awake at 7:30 at night. I'm usually asleep right now. This is awesome.
And I'm normally up late, so
yeah.
We never get to see each other during actual awake and daylight hours.
Thank you for coming out on this snowy night. I have to say,
it's crazy here.
I grew up in Pittsburgh and then moved and live in Washington now. And when there's this much snow, Washington completely shuts down as if it was the apocalypse. I mean, it's like people are fleeing. They're getting toilet paper and milk, which I don't know what that does to help in blizzards, but apparently it does something.
Yeah, it's the milk. People want the milk.
People want milk. Yeah, but I mean, it's good to see people are hardy in this part of the country, like in Pittsburgh. This is nothing.
Yeah, no. We were talking with a bunch of people waiting outside for the bus, just throwing snowballs at each other, like waiting outside. I'm like, don't you guys want to come in? It's cold. They're like, Dad, this is nothing. It's gonna get worse. So we'll try and answer some of your questions and have some fun, and then get you all home safely.
Yeah, no, that's the important thing. And this is this evening. it's really a conversation. If you listen to the sorts of stories that you hear from Robert, that you hear on our program, I mean, the feeling we hope you leave with is that you sort of become part of a story with us, and we're all writing the story together and playing a role. Because when we make radio, I mean, we're curious and we ask questions and we want to know, what people are thinking about in their lives and what keeps them up at night. And that's what this is about. I mean, we have some people on stage who are experts, and neither of us fall into that category.
Experts. But you put it so poetically. Oh yeah, you're all part of our story, which is code for we're going to ask you a lot of annoying questions, and we're going to be intrusive about your lives. But the nice thing is, safe space. We'll all ask questions. We'll all get some answers. You know what? You can even ask us uncomfortable questions.
Anything you want to ask us.
Really, it's a small crowd. We can all just talk to each other.
Yeah. So we thought we'd start by kind of getting the mood by telling you a couple stories that we have done and playing a few of the voices that we have heard when we've been doing stories and doing our economic reporting. Robert, I think we're going to start with a story that you did a couple years ago for NPR's Planet Money. And you pitted a grandmother and a grandson against each other, and you had them competing for the same job, which sounds really cruel. But tell me what was going on.
Yeah, we actually sat them down for a job interview, grandma, grandson, and we said only one gets the job. And the reason why we started this was we noticed an interesting fact about the economy, which is there are now more people over the age of 65 in the workforce than there are teenagers. People who at one point we would have expected to retire are sticking around, and teenagers who are used to getting their first jobs are not getting those jobs. And sometimes those are the same jobs. Those are the very same jobs in grocery stores, or in fast food restaurants. And so we brought these two in, and the grandmother, her name was Alice. She was super sweet. And, she just really was not ready to stop working at the age of 65.
I don't think I'm going to ever leave the job world. I honestly don't think so. I don't really have an investment portfolio to fall back on. I am really grateful that I'm able to work, and I enjoy my job.
Now, Max, he told us stories about basically going in to interview. He was, even in front of his grandmother, he was not the most polite kid, because he would just be like, I go into these places, these grocery stores, these fast food restaurants, and I see old people there, old people working the jobs that I want to apply for. And believe me, this kid has applied everywhere.
I've applied to Quiznos, Wendy's, McDonald's, Arby's, Harris Teeter, Food Lion, Dollar General.
Now, of course, Alice volunteered. She said if it came down to, a young person wanting her job, and she knew that young person like her son, she would, of course, give that job over. But she's like, this is abstract, I want to keep my job as long as possible, and I hope the next generation, there's enough job growth for those people to have jobs.
And we did a series of stories around the same time at Morning Edition, and we called it Family Matters, which might be familiar. And we were really interested. we were really interested in a trend in the country, which is that more and more Americans were living in multiple generations to get by, multiple adult generations. I mean, there were people who were living with their kids and their parents and just struggling to make it together. And one of the people that we really had the privilege of spending time with when we did that was a woman named Ida Christian. She was 89 years old when we visited her at her home in Maryland. She was not healthy. Dementia was really beginning to set in, and her family had made a decision that they were going to care for her. They didn't want her to go to a nursing home, and that was a decision that would really put strain on the family. And I have to tell you, Ida, her voice just always sticks with me. She just loves to sing.
Sing your favorite song.
Oh, that is my favorite song.
Okay, I'm gonna say the first couple words. It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
And so the other voice you hear there was Yolanda. And Yolanda is Ida's granddaughter. And she had decided that she was going to take a year or two off her job to take care of her grandmother full time. And that was a decision that was really difficult. Yolanda was in her mid-40s. She had been making money as a human resources manager at a nonprofit. And the family kind of figured out this schedule where Yolanda would take care of her grandmother during the day, and Geneva, Yolanda's mother, Ida's daughter, would come in and take care of her at night. So there was 24-hour care. And so Yolanda had only planned to do this to sort of cut her career off for 1 year. When I met her, it had already been 2, and she was just telling me that it was just proving so difficult.
I used to hear about people saying, oh, you know, we got to put our parents in a home. We can't deal with it anymore. And I used to think, oh, how cruel are you? You know, but now I understand how people get to that last possible moment. It takes over your entire life.
It took over her entire life. She was feeling isolated. I mean, she talked about not having the friends she used to have, and she'd also burned through her entire savings.
I'm 43 years old. I'm in the prime of my earning potential years. I've got to get back to work. If I'm going to have, you know, a 401k, if I'm going to have anything to retire on, I've got to get back to work because I virtually have to start all over.
And there were all different members of this family. Geneva's brother had sold a house to try and help come up with the money to help his mom and keep caring for her. And, you know, but this family figured out a way to get by. And I'll never forget Geneva, who's, you know, the sandwich generation, you know, Ida's daughter, telling me that whatever this family was going through, it was all worth it.
Sometimes I just stop and look at my blessings. And sometimes I just stop and look at my mother. And she's still here. And she looks good. And she's healthy. She's well taken care of. And that means so much to me.
So voices like this, I mean, probably some of you hear them and you can connect to them. I mean, and these are the kinds of moments that, you know, it's just in this job, we feel so privileged that people allow us into their lives to sort of feel the pain with them. And we reached out to this family, and, you know, Ida is not doing that well. She's still with us, but the dementia's gotten far, far worse. They still sort of have the same schedule. It's been a few years now, and Yolanda has still not returned to work. She's still taking care of her grandmother. But it's those kinds of stories. You know, you think about financial decisions and you know, the pocketbook and your budget. And, you know, you can think about what's rational, you know, how to take advice and put that advice into practice. But there's so many other factors. You know, there's love and family and so many other things that are going on. So these are very difficult decisions and moments that we're talking about tonight. And I'm just glad you all came and we can have this conversation.
Let's do this thing.
Let's do this thing.
Well, so the way it works is we have some questions that maybe you filled out yourself. You did. And we can just, if people want to raise their hand and talk about things, but of course, as we mentioned, not financial professionals.
At all.
At all. There's a reason why you get into public radio, and one of them is you don't quite know how the money thing works. But luckily, what we do know, what we're really good at public radio, is finding experts who can talk about these things. And so, without further ado, we want to bring them up on stage. Who's our first person? Michelle Singletary. She writes the Color of Money column, appears in more than 100 different newspapers, been on TV, NPR, and she's done a bunch of these events with us around the country. It is our pleasure to have Michelle on stage. Come on up.
And our next panelist is Denise Winston. She is a financial educator. She is an author. You might have seen her on television, heard her on radio, talking about some of the very issues that we're talking about tonight. And so it's really, it's great to have her at her first event. This is the first time we're spending time on stage with her. She is also a former banker, and I have to tell you that in the back, the room where we were all hanging out is an old bank vault. And I was sort of joking with her and saying, wow, you know, you can't get stuck in here, can you? And she was like,
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, you can.
It's like, oh, okay.
You can totally get
well,
stuck
what
in
happens when you get stuck in a bank vault? I was like, I never got the chance to ask someone that. She was like, well, you end up staying in there for about 24 hours before they can actually reset the code and open the thing. I was like, okay, well, we're going to get to know each other. She also was telling me about the day she spent in Albany. She was at a bar and within minutes had met the bartender and met new friends. So she's just the kind of person I want to hang out with. So Denise, come on up. And next, and Sarah, I'm going to do this without my notes because I can't find the right page.
You know Sarah?
I know. Sarah Saddlemeyer is at the Pew Charitable Trust and specializes in poverty and economic mobility. And actually, she has an incredibly difficult job, which is try and bring people from different political persuasions together and agree on issues of mobility and poverty, which in Washington is nearly impossible. But Sarah is going to help us kind of get the context for what we're talking about tonight, because she crunches the numbers and does the research and does an absolutely fantastic job, telling the story of numbers and research in a way that you really can access and understand. She talks to me and I feel like I'm not talking to someone who spends time, digging into the research. That's really her skill. She's also an amazing karaoke singer, so you should get her to do that tonight. Sarah Saddlemeyer, come on up.
Excellent. Well, does this seem to match? You saw some of what people were concerned about. What about all of you? Why don't we start? We often ask, what is keeping you up at night? So,
Right.
Michelle, what is currently keeping you up at night?
Well, I've done this a couple times, and again, thank you guys for coming out. And I had a chance to talk to some people before we started. Gonna tell your husband, right? Right, okay.
You were out there talking to people? We were eating like shrimp. And see that, Robert? That's where we get it wrong. That's why Michelle knows what she's doing here.
She's basically solved everyone's problems before this even
That's
started.
right.
Thank you, everyone.
I gave her a home assignment.
It's
There were like 4 shrimp.
no longer with us.
We ate them. We ate the shrimp. I'm sorry. The shrimp's in
See,
the
this
bowl.
is what happens when only a few people come. You get the best of us. So what I was going to say is that what bothers me now has changed, because since we last were together as a team, I don't know if you know that the Washington Post was bought out by Bezos, who is the owner of Amazon. So Amazon didn't buy us, he bought us. He has enough money to buy us. And then recently they announced that they were changing our pension. And I had the Post had one of the best pensions left. And they're changing it so that you can't earn any more credits towards your pension. Now, I am now in my highest earning potential. So, and I'm not going to retire for, I'm waiting for my last to get through college before my husband and I retire. We have a plan. And so now all of that's gone. Wow. And it's just where it is now.
I can imagine all the reporters at the Post lined up at your desk.
Oh, yeah. They were sending me, what do you think, Michelle? What do you think? I don't know. And so I know this is being recorded. So I still want to keep my job.
Yeah. And there is no shrimp if you're recording this.
I won't comment, but I will say that I'm pissed, because I did not take other jobs. And one of the reasons I stayed at the Post was because it had such a great pension. I was recruited by the New York Times, Money Magazine, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to stay here. I'm a loyal employee. I love the Post, great pension. So here I am. But I will say that I'm not afraid, because my husband and I have followed a path of frugality that allows us to readjust for this change. We don't carry a lot of debt. We never have. We're paying cash for our kids' college education. We're going to pay off our home before we retire. And so even though we won't get as much, we will be okay, because we have a standard of living that can adjust to that. Doesn't mean that I'm not pissed. May mean that I take one less trip that I plan in retirement. But I'm going to readjust. And that's me, and I'm okay. But now we know, I don't know if you saw the news, the big news is that there's going to be some people in pension and multi-employer pension plans, those who work for trucking and things like that, they're proposing to cut their pension by 30%. And you know what happened in Detroit. So I'm very concerned about those folks who still are fortunate enough to still have a pension, that nothing's guaranteed anymore. So really, it's up to us.
Path of frugality. I like that. And there's someone else up here who has followed a path of frugality. Now, Denise, let me get this right. Reader's Digest called you one of the cheapest people in the United States?
Yes. And it's chic to be cheap. It's okay. I'm good with that.
If you take home anything tonight, it is that it is chic to be cheap. So what exactly does that mean? And if you were that frugal, what could possibly keep you up at night?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Michelle said, because for 25 years I was a banker. And what that means is I had, through a bunch of banking acquisitions, but I too had a very nice pension. I had a lot of stock options. And in April of 2009, that was just after Washington Mutual had been purchased by Chase. And if you remember that, all of my pension, all of my stock options, pretty much everything just poof disappeared overnight. And I too was pissed. And I had to figure out what I was going to do with that. And when you work in the bank, you see how much people don't know. We go to work, we get our first paycheck, you get stuck in this vicious, you graduate, you get your job, and you're stuck in this cycle of earning and spending and earning, spending. And so what keeps me up at night is the fact that people don't even know what they don't know until they know, okay? So that's why I think it's fabulous you're all here, is because you are thirsty. Even if you have no financial worries, maybe you pick something up that you can share with someone else. So the reason why I'm known as one of the cheapest people of America is because I actually have lived on my own since I was 16. So when you live on your own since you were 16, you figure it out. You have to make a lot out of like that much. So couponing, yes. Rebating, yes. Work in the system to my advantage. The reason why people get rich is because they take advantage of the opportunities that are available to every single one of us. We just have to figure out what those opportunities are. So to me, financial literacy, financial education, whether it's youth or people at their corporate job, we all need to share that information. And I think my banking background it's easy to see where those gaps are. So that's what my mission is to really just provide real, everyday, practical financial snacks, little small pieces that you can digest one at a time.
I ate one of her snacks back in the other room. I was about to throw away a bottle of water, a plastic bottle, and I got a lecture,
now,
which is going to stay with me.
Trash a lot of times is cash. That little bottle right there is 5 cents, right? So, mine. So
No label.
no label. Oh, I don't know. In California, we don't have anything about labels. I don't know what that means. It has to have a label?
See, I knew that, Denise. That's why I was.
That's
why I
why
was putting it
you
in the chat.
got one on me.
I read about that.
So anyway, that's my stay awake at night stuff.
Well, Sarah, what keeps you awake at night? And I know, by the way, you should know the Pew Foundation does not allow Sarah to speak personally about her own personal concerns. So statistically, what might one worry about at night?
Well, I feel like I need to first clarify that I do not, nor have I ever had a pension. So I feel like maybe I need to be looking into this more. But student loans actually do keep me up at night. Our research shows that Generation X, so the most recent generation that we have good data on, that these people are in their prime working years and they have a financial history and we can sort of comb through their data. Those Gen Xers who make more money than their parents, so who have higher family income than their parents, many of them, including the ones who went to college, have higher debt and have lower wealth, and a lot of that is driven by having higher debt.
So they have higher income per se, but they haven't accumulated as much wealth at the same age.
Right. And so part of that is being held back by your debt, and part of that is them having a lot of student debt. So I think that's an issue that I'm sure we'll get into more tonight.
Excellent. Well, let's start. The way we've kind of done this in the past is we've sort of taken a little stroll through the worries of life, starting with college and moving on to retirement near the end, although they are, as we saw, sort of intertwined issues. And Cheryl Salem, right? What is that? Cheryl spoke to, oh, well, come on. You got to share with the crowd. You know, what did you tell Cheryl? Okay, let's pretend. Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time. So Cheryl, you are a single parent?
No. Did you put that on there?
Okay, wait, there's something going on.
Something's going on here.
What?
So can I fill him in?
Yeah,
Let me help, because
yeah,
she's a little rough.
'cause
So
now-
she's a lovely person.
Yes.
So we've already talked, and she's going to go home and tell her husband that he's right. So she's remarried, and is it 2 children, Cheryl? 2? We've got a blended family. Blended family. So she's concerned about paying for college, and this is what happens in Albany stays in Albany, right? So
Happens in the Linda stays in the Linda. It's staying in this room, right?
So bad divorce, doesn't want to rely on a new husband to help to save for college. That's what we were talking about. So she thinks that she has to do it by herself, even though she got a man to help her. And so she's worried about saving for her children to go to college. So I was saying,
No, but she wanted to take responsibility for her own children, even in this blended family.
don't listen to him.
No, I didn't say. I was just trying to paraphrase her.
But no, right. So what I was saying is that they're a unit now, and that they both can save for the college educations of all the children in this blended family.
Well, I mean, this is an incredibly important point in all things financial, which is, regardless of what you choose in your own personal life and romantic life, it's a form of insurance. Like pairing up is a form of insurance for paying for different things, and someone loses a job, or someone has a job, or doesn't have a job, or different forms of debt, or different children.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You can listen to that, right?
I'm so afraid.
No, it's absolutely right, because they're one unit now, and they need to save together. And so one of the reasons why she came was to find out how to save. And one of the vehicles that I like is 529 plans. It has a lot of tax advantages. In the state of New York, I believe, if I'm not incorrect, is that you can save up to $15,000 and get a tax credit.
10,000 as someone who lives in New York. Yep.
And in Maryland, it's only 25. So you can save up to that. You get that off of your taxes. So that's a great benefit to be in the New York plan. But more importantly, the 529 plan is like the 401k, just for college. And that's how my husband and I have saved for all three of our children. And right now I have got a kid in college. And she did win a scholarship, but the majority of the money is coming from her 529 plan, which we started when she was a little baby. And you still have time to do that.
Denise, you're doing that. I'm ready to say something. Move.
Yeah,
I get to know you already. This is good. I feel it.
Well,
Yeah.
and I can speak to that because I remarried Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Way Wrong the first time, got it right the second time. But also as an independent woman living on my own at 16, I became kind of to my detriment, so independent and so insistent. But what I found, and this is my personal experience, is that my husband is a provider, and he wants to help, and me being so adamant to not, it makes me kind of want to cry because I didn't realize how demeaning I was being to him by me demanding that I pay my way, and I pay my way for my daughter. So I don't know if that speaks to you, but it's okay to let somebody else help you. And I will say, for one of the creative things that you can do for the 529, which is great because if your child, not every child's going to be academic, right? Maybe not every child's going to go to college. So if you have multiple children in the family, maybe you can do some adjusting. But one of the things you can do is let everybody know you have this 529 plan. Our kids have so much stuff. The young people, there's no real young people, but do you guys remember what you got for Christmas last year? I mean, really. Our kids do not remember what they got for Christmas last year. So if you tell everybody in the family, we have this 529 plan, the best gift we can all give our children is the gift of education. So you write a check, you put it in the 529, you write a card, and you put the reason why you're making this contribution on the card. You give it to the parent, and the parent puts it in a box. When the child goes off to college, you give them this box along with that tuition and say, these are all the people that believe in you and want to see you do well.
Wow.
Nice.
So you are bringing everybody to put this child through their college, right? And we believe in you. And really, it gets the vested interest from the child. It's not just the parent resentfully saying, do you know what I did to sacrifice to get you this money, right? So be creative. You can ask other people. Really, they have enough stuff. We have enough stuff.
How often do you see? Oh,
Sorry, I was going to say, and to stress this, you keep ownership of your 529 plan. It is in the name of a child, but you maintain control over it. So if there's a grandparent who wants to do this, if that child ends up not going to college or not having educational expenses, you can move it to another child. It can be used for different sort of things. But it's a really positive way to put that, rather than, oh, I had to save and struggle just to get you through college, rather than it's a gift.
And the kids really, when they see, and I see you raising your hand, I want to get to you, but when the kids see that more people are invested in them, they feel obligated to do well. And I don't know about you, but as a parent, I often ask myself, do I want to get what I want, or do I want to be right? Now, most people say I want both. Most women, anyway. But anyway, I've learned to figure out what I get, what I want.
Is there Amy Corin Roth on the college question, is she? Oh, look at this. We're ahead of it. I feel like we're going to wrap early.
We're like, thank you so much. What about our $30,000 dancer? Could we hear a little bit about your debt and sort of what your plans are? And I think we have a microphone up here. Come on down.
Oh, the dancer. I was going to say, no, she studied public policy
in
prisons.
But she was dancing.
Did
you see the dance?
It was a good dance.
It was like you were like 5,000, 25,000. She was like 30,000.
Actually, I once won a hip hop dance competition at.
See, Robert? I could sense that.
So, who do you have a job now?
I do. I'm
And
a postdoctoral fellow at SUNY.
Oh, at SUNY. And so you are someone who will stay in the sort of public sector, or are you planning to work for a private prison, or?
So I'm hoping to get a job as an academic eventually. So I study prisons, but I don't actually plan on working for them. So my plan with my debt is that I unfortunately took out my loans at like probably the worst time. And so they're at 6.8% interest.
Really?
Yes. And they're not eligible for refinancing under federal refinancing because they're graduate loans. So my plan was to rejigger using a private refinancing. So I'm very fortunate because my parents have offered to pay the loans and I will pay them back, basically.
And you think you can get a better interest rate out of your parents?
I have negotiated a better interest rate.
It was like a lawyer
How was that
thing.
negotiation?
They're like, we're not going to go under 4. We have a retirement to think about.
So yeah, I'm very fortunate because my parents are financially stable and they're approaching a retirement. My dad's retired and my mom is approaching a retirement, but that's the plan. But it's still $30,000 worth of debt.
So is the money that they're going to give you extra money that they don't need for their retirement? Like if you never paid it back, they'll be okay?
So I
That
think
would be no.
So they have plenty of money. Yes. They are fortunate they have
They
plenty
might disagree.
Right.
No,
so I would say ask them that question that I just asked you.
So I happen to know that the money that I am taking, and this is how the interest rate got worked out, is from one of their, they have a home equity loan that they just took out, and so I'm basically paying back the home equity. She's getting stressed.
Did they take out the equity
I'm
loan
getting a
to
hot
do
flash.
this?
No.
Everybody's getting stressed up here. Just take a moment. Wait, Michelle, why was that question important about?
Because she's seeing loads
Take
all
a
the way
moment.
down.
I'm having
I call
hot
that a
flash.
personal summer.
So then the answer to my question is no. If they're using a loan to pay your loan, then they don't have the money because a loan is not their money.
No, I know, but they actually have. So my dad was recently in an accident. He won a huge settlement from a civil lawsuit. They're just not. They're just not touching that money. Like, I don't know what to tell you. They have a ton of money, but they took the home equity loan to put solar panels on the house and apparently to pay my student debt. I don't.
This happens a lot. Don't worry. It's okay.
Perhaps what she was trying to say, rather than critique your parents, is that like a lot of parents, like we can't ask your parents, but a lot of parents will make sacrifices of their own retirement for their children. And whether it's paying for college or paying off a loan or giving a first-time home, and parents will do that. And they'll say, no, it's fine. Like we got the money, and then go home and lay awake, stare at the ceiling. So like maybe not in your particular case, but that's like the worry, right?
Right.
That
And I
through
was
the
critiquing
generosity,
your parent.
Yeah.
He's trying to be nice because he loves me, but I do not apologize for being tough. And the problem I have with that is, and they may have enough, and that may be cool. Just ask the question. But parents should not do that because you can earn your way out of those loans. When they get closer to retirement, that's all that they have. And if they live longer than they expect to, that's money that they're going to need. And there's this sort of phrase that goes around that they can't borrow for retirement, and you've already borrowed for your future. You can earn your way out of those loans. I personally would make sure that the money that they're giving you, they won't need, because they've planned it out. They've met with a financial planner and said, this is extra money outside of the money we're going to need, including whatever they're going to be taking from their investments, the settlement or whatever. And if that's extra, like, okay, we will be great for 30 years, then by all means, definitely help you out. But if they can't say yes to that, then they should not do that, and you shouldn't take the money.
Yeah, I mean, they consulted with their financial advisor before they agreed to the agreement, and it's all in writing, and it's especially important because there are tax implications. They can't just gift me the money because it's $30,000, right? So that's much more than the federal limit for a gift. They can gift me 14.
They can. It's a lifetime limit, and so the lifetime limit, I think, is about $1 million, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, I think the larger question, and to your point, is that this may not apply to you, but other people listening who are closer to retirement, just be sure that you are not jeopardizing your retirement to help adult children who have earning years ahead of them to get out of debt.
Yeah.
Or grandchildren. I mean, it's really
Right.
important. So what was your question when you brought this up as a whole? What you're asking the question for a reason about you've got the loan, or do you want to know, was that a strategy that you should have deployed, or?
No, I mean, I feel totally comfortable. I feel my parents are comfortable, and I think the question was really for me, like, what am I doing?
Hence the dancing. That's why she's dancing. She's the luckiest grad in America.
I think the important thing was I was really not savvy when I took the loans in the first place, so I did take some unsubsidized loans. When I started, I should have been more thoughtful. When I was starting out at Berkeley, like, wow, 6.8%. I should have been thinking more carefully about. I mean, I felt like I was living frugally, but I probably could have been living more frugally. But I got wiser as I got older in graduate school.
Again, you don't even know what you don't know until you know, right?
That's
so
right.
Shouldn't we be teaching, especially when you're getting student loans, it is critical that you understand you're sold this education, and unfortunately a lot of kids don't complete their education, so they leave without. You're laughing. It's not. It is so difficult. So there's a lot to be said with that. And at least you did get wiser, and this is why we're here. We're sharing our experiences, right? So that somebody else doesn't make that same mistake, and they know the questions to be asked. And with your parents, it may have been a tax strategy. If they really met with their solar, there's tax credits. There's a credit. It depends on how sophisticated their situation. But I definitely agree with, you want to make sure that you are not just giving your children or grandchildren money. And jeopardizing, and that goes too, of living at home and over-giving.
Well, can I ask, Sarah, you and I were having a conversation earlier today over burgers. Sorry to overshare.
Burgers and karaoke.
Yeah, and you were using, and I'm totally naive about this stuff, but I want to make sure I was understanding some of the terms. Financial security, right? That is perhaps if you're $30,000 in debt, you might not feel financially secure, sort of at a moment when you're early on. Mobility is something that's later on. It's like, how mobile can you be? How successful can you be at moving up the ladder? How are those things linked? And if you're, for example, $30,000 in debt, if you're feeling financially secure, if you're not, how important is that for sort of how your life and career will follow?
Yeah, and I'm only laughing because we went to the same grad school, so I also have loans. So what our project does right now and what we're looking at is short-term financial security. So we're really looking at people's balance sheets. And a lot of other research and a lot of other sort of things going on look at individual pieces, but we're trying to look at them holistically. So your income, your consumption, your assets, and your liabilities, because we believe, as I'm sure you do, that people make decisions about their finances looking at everything. Your finances don't exist in a vacuum. And so we're sort of seeing how the financial security that households have and what's going on in their balance sheets, how does that really impact their long-term economic opportunity? And we've just started this project, but what we're seeing overwhelmingly is that people want financial security and care much less about economic mobility. And we're seeing that both through surveys and other focus groups we've done talking to people, but also through the data that I think I'm trying to remember the exact number, but in a report that we're going to be releasing soon, a majority, more than 2/3 of Americans and American families are financially insecure in one of several ways. So this is something that really spans across the income distribution. And we don't think of this as just a low-income issue or a middle-class issue. This is all Americans and all income brackets are worried about this. And that's sort of why we started this line of research. And so I tell people when I do these events that my job is to ask more questions than I answer. So this is sort of the next thing on our plate, is to really delve into this and have conversations and really think about the importance of short-term financial security.
Well, in this room, who is more worried about their current financial security more than their mobility? Who's more worried about financial security? Who's more worried about mobility? Who's worried about nothing?
He's not getting the question.
Yeah, and do you...
Well, if you're not, maybe you can help us understand what's the difference and what does it mean?
So this is how we look at it. Other people might have their own definitions, but we look at short-term financial security as people feeling like they're able to pay their bills. Maybe they have a little something left. This is a personal feeling. This isn't a scientific definition, So it's, do you feel like you have enough to cover something happen in an emergency? Do you feel good about where you are? And we sort of look at economic opportunity and economic mobility as sort of longer term. Over time, are you able to move up the income ladder either compared to where you were or compared to where your parents or peers or whomever you're comparing yourself to? What does that look like?
And I think, as we see those news stories, whatever it may be slowing a little bit the growth of medical costs, we sit down, they say, oh, look at what your costs are now, put your budget together now, and there's this huge question mark out there, which is, am I going to be lucky or am I going to be sick, and how much is it going to cost, which no one seems to know 2 or 3 years out. Like, this is a huge thing that in the little calculator you can do online, there's a big question mark that could be half your savings or it could be 10% of your savings.
Well, Michelle made a point earlier. There's no guarantee anymore. The only guarantee we have is that plan that she's put together, that many of us have put together to make sure we have it. And for me, that's what I learned quick on. If you don't know what to do with your money, somebody else certainly does. And it usually doesn't have your best interest at heart, right? So when you figure it out and you have that plan, and as a parent, a lot of times we get caught up on wanting to leave our children money, but did your parents leave you any money? And did you turn out okay? Sometimes have you guys seen this delay to launch because the kid's waiting around for their fair share of that life insurance policy or that inheritance?
Delay to launch.
I mean, one of the if you want to ensure that your children do well, and really what we're talking about is we want to be sure that they achieve a middle class income status, because that's really, most people aren't going to say, I want my kid to be a multimillionaire. We want them to be able to buy a house. We want them to be able to save. We want them to have money for the co-payments or whatever for your medical. You want to be able to have them send their children, your grandchildren, to school. And so the thing that you can do most for your children is teach them financial principles that will last a lifetime. You have to teach them about being frugal. You have to teach them to delay gratification, not to have a sense of entitlement, and that whatever, like, I love that you're in public policy, and I hope you stay with that, because we need people to do that. And, I volunteer in prisons, and so that you're studying it, that's wonderful. My kid wanted to be a teacher and may still be a teacher. And what's one of the first things people say when someone wants to be a teacher?
You never make any money.
Never make any money. But I don't know about you, but the people who impacted my life the most were educators. And it drives me nuts when people say that about my child. And I live in the Washington, D.C. area. You go to parties, and people are bragging on their children, and, what's your child going to be? And what do they say? Oh, I think you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or a lobbyist here in Washington.
Washington.
And then when I say teacher, there's like a silence. Like somehow I've done my child some disservice. But I have taught my child how to handle her money, and she will be well. I am not worried at all that she will be able to live on whatever income she makes, because we have instilled in them a sense to not have a sense of entitlement. And and you bring them to things like this. You teach them that, you pour into them. But I'm telling you, you don't have to give them a book. You don't have to do anything. You live the life, and they will model it. And because the studies show that the greatest influence in your child's life is you. And so there's a lot of push to put financial education in schools, and it's true. It's a good place to have it. But I'm telling you, they will learn the values from you. We tithe. They are learning to tithe. When my kid gets her allowance, she tithes on her allowance. She's learning to give back.
Tithe to your church.
Tithe to a church, tithe to charity, yes.
Oh, do you let them pick?
They do. When we had, for example, when Katrina was here, our church had a offering, and my son gave all of his allowance when the basket came around. And you know, I'm frugal, so I'm like, no, baby, you don't need to give him all of that. Come on. And he actually did this. He said, no, Mom, they need it more than I do. Let me just, because, you know, we're all sort of intimate here, and, you know, I'm going to ask you guys a question. My pastor asked me if I can take a liberty. So, how many of you are rich? Like, I am rich. Right. I just asked you one question, and then asked you to talk back to me. How many of you are rich?
Come on, raise your hand.
So many ways, yeah.
Okay, right. So, you were sitting there thinking, what did I mean by that, right? Okay, so let me ask you this. How many of you could have a clean glass of water today?
Mm-hmm. Right.
How many of you could have meals? Some of us could use to not have some meals. I know I'm one of them. How many of you have a roof over your head? Yeah. Right. How many have somebody who loves you? Mm-hmm. You definitely have somebody who loves you. Your parents are on the ball, right? How many have children? You know, I mean, some people can't have kids. You know, how many of you have a job? Right. How many of you have your own teeth? Right. So then, why were you doing all the calculation in your head when I asked you that question? You don't want, because you're not counting what you already have. If you want to be wealthy, think about what you already have. And you are already rich, so then you won't be trying to get so much more. That will allow you to have money in your budget to save for your retirement, to save for those medical costs that you can't predict, to save to send your kids to college. They may not be able to go away to, Berkeley. They may have to go to the community college for 2 years and transfer to the 4-year university, but they can go. And I'm just saying, we need to ask ourselves that question more often so that we know we have more than we think we have.
Is Elizabeth Beechand in here? Am I saying that right? Elizabeth? Do you have a very powerful story here, but I would love, if you're willing to come to the microphone and tell us all about it, we can talk about it.
We're all getting to know each other. We're all rich here. One rich person to another.
Right.
Well, it kind of reminds me of one of the stories you talked about at the beginning about the family taking care of the grandmother. My sister was a widow, and she died very suddenly about 2 years ago.
I'm sorry.
And she lived in rural Ohio. Her son, my nephew, was 17 when she died. He turned 18 within a month. I was named guardian, but of course, by the time, nothing went through the courts because he was 18 within a month. But he grew up in rural Ohio with learning disabilities that were never really diagnosed, and he sort of went through the school system. They passed him from grade to grade. And so when she died, he stayed in Ohio thinking he could live on his own. And when I picked him up a year later, he had 17 cents left in his bank account.
Wow.
You know, my family is struggling because I've done 9 trips to Ohio. I tried to set up in a community college. He failed all his classes. I mean, it's just, if it was my child, I would have been researching and planning how do you take care of someone with a disability. She did leave in her will, knowing he had problems, that all the money would go in an educational trust, and it's not a lot of money at all, but it's in an educational trust which he can't touch till he's age 35. And so I am tasked with trying to figure out, never having had money to invest, how do I put it away for him? Do I put money in a retirement account for him? He probably will never have a really high-paying job and a pension or anything like that. So I just have like a million questions. But step one was he came to live with us, which is wonderful. He got a job as a greeter at Walmart, so he's working. He's a great kid. But I have to worry about his money. I have to worry about what's going to happen to him when I'm gone. And sometimes I feel pretty overwhelmed.
Right.
Well, I want to hear from the people who know, but the fact that he has a job, he's come to live with you. I mean, these sound like really wonderful steps and progress in an incredibly difficult situation. So that I hope you're feeling the positive steps that have happened and what you've already done for him.
And I know it's going to take time, one step at a time.
Right. Well, definitely commend you for doing that. Not a lot of people would do it. My son has autism, so I very much know where you are right now. He's high functioning, so we feel like he'll be able to work. But we know that we are going to have to set up certain things to make sure he's okay. I would suggest that you meet with an attorney and a financial planner and set up a special needs trust. And that you would name someone else in addition to yourself, or if you're married, your husband or someone, that can take over in case something happens to you.
Is that a name of it? It's called a special needs
It's
trust?
called a special needs trust. You set it up so that money goes in it, and the benefit of a special needs trust is that if he ever needs public funds, he can qualify for aid without jeopardizing some of that aid. So, we've got a lot of things to do this evening, but definitely, and I can talk to you afterwards, but, and I had a brother who had epilepsy, and I ended up taking care of him until he was 32. And we set up a special needs trust that I was taking care of him and helping, with his expenses and, basically paying his rent and things like that, and applied for disability. You should look into applying for disability for him. So it's a long, hard process, but you need to get an attorney to do that to help you. So.
All right, special needs trust.
Special
That's a great.
needs trust is a fantastic route.
Yeah, that's great. David, a lot of people asked about retirement issues.
They did. You're saying, David, you have those cards. Why don't you say something right now?
You know what? We're taking down the fourth wall for this thing. It's all just like, here, let me walk over there.
There's actually, there's
pretending.
David who actually gave us a card on retirement. Is David here? David?
Oh, no, wait, David sleeps like a baby at night. He said so.
Doesn't mean I don't financial
He takes the ambience.
It means you're tired. Tired from working so hard.
Are you willing to come to the microphone and talk?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's talk some retirement stuff.
You put on your card retirement exclamation point, which I think that's
only one?
You're very emotional. You did the exclamation. Maybe you should come to the microphone with David.
No, I'm very comfortable. But the president used every time you tell somebody to do something, you say, well, talk to your financial advisor. Okay? Well, I have a financial advisor, but it ain't cheap. Okay? And as I retire, I don't know that I want to pay this guy for his fees for the rest of my life. And I'm wondering about transferring to like Vanguard, which will manage my money for a much lower fee. But they're not I can't ask them financial advice. And so, that's part of my concern. My other question now is, what do people approaching retirement not know they don't know?
That is always the question.
We will publish a list, and that's only for people who came tonight. You can't share it with anybody else. It's only for us in this room.
Let's start with the financial advisors versus putting in one of these low-cost plans. You don't get as much support, but you make more money. Where do you come down on that?
You want to? I mean, I can do it too, but
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you can fight. Who's most frugal?
It boils down, whenever you go to a big fund, you're going to have a lot of different fees that are hidden, so you have to be sophisticated on being able to figure out how much it really costs, and is it about the same? Are you seeing a fee-only financial planner? Or
No.
Somebody that's managing your assets and taking a percentage?
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Ooh,
it's
1.6 seems.
And then for the first amount, and then it goes down to one when you get up to a certain level, and it changes as you go.
Yeah.
I just know that I fill out the stuff for the tax attorney.
And you see his fee and you get.
And I see the fee for the year, and I go like, whoa, we could have had that much more in the account.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So a fee-only financial planner might be an option for you, where you know exactly going in, you get some advice. You have to, you need a checklist of the things that you need to ask a financial advisor, and you need to be clear exactly how they're making their money, and the overall arching thing of that, because it can be incredibly expensive. And to me, knowledge is power if I use it. Right? So how I use my time educating myself and figuring things out. Now, for you to all of a sudden have a financial, someone that's been managing your money, one day you wake up and go, I'm going to do it. I don't recommend that.
I was doing it until it got to a certain amount, and I felt uncomfortable doing it anymore.
Okay. So then maybe you're a little more sophisticated than you're giving your credit than we might know. So maybe there's a partnership, and maybe that fee-only financial planner might be somebody you could partner with. Michelle?
I think you can do a combination of both. I mean, I have a planner, fee only, and I also have funds in Vanguard. And I think if you had a toothache or you needed a root canal, would you try to do it yourself?
Right. No.
Right.
That's why I'm asking myself.
So we can't look at it as, oh, I'm paying them all this money. You are paying them for knowledge and expertise that you don't have. And I'm really cheap, so if I pay somebody to do something, I'm very comfortable in telling people that we need someone else to look over what we're doing, because you don't want to make a mistake, because you won't know it's a mistake until it's too late. It's like trying to do your own will and not doing it right, and then you're dead. And then you can't fix it. So I look at financial planners like we wouldn't try to, fix our own root canal.
But at the same time, if you found out your dentist was getting a commission kickback every time they removed a tooth, you would
look for a different dentist to worry
But that's
about
where
it.
your due diligence comes. If your portfolio is performing well and they've given you good advice, then that money was well spent. Right? If you're not happy, and if you want to renegotiate your fee, by all means do that. That fee is not outrageous. It's usually around 1%, and then as you say, you get a break as it gets more. That's standard. That is not outrageous. But I think, and you can still put funds if you say, okay, I don't want to pay fees on everything, then you can use some of the, index funds and things like that. My husband and I do a combination of both. But what I do like is having someone I can talk to, go, what do you think about this? And sometimes we disagree and I don't do what he says. And most recently I didn't. Now I took a risk. My husband and I kept a lot of our money in the market because we took a hit like everybody else. I was very conservative at the beginning of my investment years, and so I'm trying to make up for that. Now, it has paid off because my portfolio is like, because the market went. My advisor was like, be more conservative, be more conservative. Now we're going to probably pull back and listen to him. I think it's worth the money to have someone tell you and look over what you're doing. But it's like with anything else. If you don't think you're getting the value, then don't do it. But I personally think it's worth the money.
Well, and you also want to invest in what you know. Right? So if you can double check and check on his performance and see, and I absolutely agree, if he is giving you an extraordinary performance in your portfolio, look at that performance versus how much you're paying. So if that's a good number, you got to look at that. It may be well worth the money. But if you invest in what you know.
do compare it to an index and such, because the market has, money placed randomly would have gone up 15, 20% over the last year.
And when it comes to fees, you can do a Google search on how to identify fees within a portfolio. So if you're looking at taking any of that and doing it, because you do want to know what those fees are, because they can be very hidden.
Time has totally flown. Were you dancing?
But a good ending question was the second one you asked. What was it? How do we know what we don't know about retirement? What was it? You phrased it better.
Not know that they should know.
Yeah.
Can I recommend a book? Because since we're so short on time, one of my former colleagues at the Washington Post, Stan Hendon, has written what I think is a wonderful book about just answering those questions. All the things, he was a financial person at the Post, and when he retired, he was like, oh my gosh, what I did not know. And so it's very simply written. A lot of the questions that you were asked, things that you should be doing, when you should be doing it. He just did a new edition of the book. It's Stan Hendon. I can't remember the title of the book. It's retirement questions or something like that. But if you Google it, Stan Hendon, somebody Google it for me, because I'm having a senior moment and a hot flash at the same time. But I would, what is it called? Hendon, H-I-N-D-E-N. Stan Hendon.
You're saying this book would be good for people who want to know what they don't know and need to know.
Absolutely. Like, for example, and I'll be really quick, with this whole pension question, he did not take the spousal benefit, and he said he regretted that. The whole idea with pension is that you get less, but then your spouse gets something. So, like, I'm not in this, I'm about maybe 10 years away from that. So I'm thinking, 15. But I'm thinking, should I take the spousal benefit? Men die before women, but then my husband's really in good shape and he's fine, so maybe he'll live longer than me. And so, but I decided that I would rather take less money to ensure that he'll have some money, even though technically, I shouldn't say technically, statistically, I might outlive him. But I'm going to do that. That's one of the questions he answers in the book.
The one moment that has stuck with me tonight, Elizabeth, you stood there and said, I feel overwhelmed. And I wonder if we can talk about that as we finish up, and we're going to stay afterwards, and you can talk to us about anything individually. But Sarah, can I just ask you, based on all the research that you do, as you look at people who are overwhelmed, I mean, you pour through numbers and you look at kind of decisions people make and how it affects mobility, and I mean, is there any way to say, when you feel overwhelmed, here are a few of the things that they should be prioritizing because it matters 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road?
I would say something, this is not the only thing, but one thing we're really looking at now is asset building, and we're looking at it from a future mobility perspective. So what our research has really shown is that it seems intuitive that if you make more money, you can save more money, right? Building assets. But I think how people don't look at their assets is that those assets are things which you can dip into and invest in yourself to get a higher paying job later on, to increase your future mobility for yourself, to invest in mobility enhancing opportunities for your kids. But those are also things that if your car breaks down and you need a car to get to work, you can dip into that and fix your car and continue your employment. So there are things that can help you move ahead on the ladder, but there are things that can help you maintain your place. And I say this because in work that will be forthcoming, it's a very exciting research paper. I know you're all really, really itching to get your hands on it, but what we look at is we look at the typical American family, and if we take all of their liquid assets, and then we take all of the other things that they can get money from in like a month or so, right? Like you might take a hit if you take money out of your retirement, but you could get that money. That an emergency that depleted 4 months of your income would totally negate most people's the positive side of their balance sheet. So in a more simple way to say that is that most people don't have enough in liquid and quasi-liquid assets to cover 4 months of income. And those are things, many of those things are things you don't want to take out because you'll get a penalty, or that's not financial advice. I'm just But I think that's something that's been really shocked us. So just looking at it from a very basic and beginning level, we're concerned about Americans' asset building.
Right.
And Michelle and Denise, what do you tell people when they just feel totally overwhelmed, like it's too much to tackle, I can't even think about what to do first?
I equate it to being lost in the forest. You're going on a day hike, and all of a sudden you go for the view over here, and you look, and you're like, oh, it's pretty. So then you look a little further, and all of a sudden you're so far off the trail that you're overwhelmed. And the first thing you have to do when you're lost is you stop, and you sit down, and you put it on paper, and you figure out exactly where you are, so you can figure out exactly where you need to go. Because once you put it on paper, really, you will be amazed. It's not probably as bad as you think it is, as you've built it up in your head. So stopping and figuring out a plan and seeking the advice of the experts, because again, we don't always know what we don't know. So asking someone else can really play a critical role of you getting out and getting back on track.
Right.
Michelle?
Right.
How to retire happiness is perfect.
That's it, right. Say it again.
How to retire happy.
How to retire happy.
Questions you should ask yourself.
Right on point, right? It's a great book. Love Stan, and he's in his 80s, and he writes a blog for AARP, so you can follow him as well. He's really good. I want to end on an upbeat because I don't want you to go out like, and the reason why I asked you that question is because I want you to appreciate what you already have, right? And if you start from there, you're like, okay, I can do this. And it might mean making different decisions, because all of this really comes down to better decision making, right? And I love what you said. When you know better, do better. Now, so you guys already know something better tonight, right? Because somebody asks you if you're rich again, what are you going to do? Yes. Right. So just know that you're going to be okay, because we are far better than most of the people in this world here in America. We are. And so once you start from that principle, okay, and you just, okay, let me talk to the people who know better. Let me talk to the lawyer and figure out how to help my nephew. Let me merge with my husband and their money and save for their college education. And if I still have issues with my former husband, I'm going to get some therapy. Right? Talk to your parents. Make sure that they're okay. Just take it one step at a time. But know that you are going to be okay as long as you make good decisions. And if it's not all adding up, make a different decision. Maybe you have to get a roommate in retirement. Maybe you're going to have your children come live with you for a little while so they can pay off their student loan debt. I know you don't want to do that, but that's the best thing to do. So just know that you're going to maybe have to move from where you are a little bit. But I know, and I have faith, that we are going to do okay if we just take a breath, assess what we already have, and get information if you don't know. Don't make a decision without talking to someone who does not have an interest in how you make that decision. So somebody independent that's not biased, and you will be okay, just like I pray that you all will get home tonight safe and sound.
That's the one piece of advice I feel like I can give. Please drive carefully. As you're thinking about all these financial decisions, focus on the road for just those 20 minutes.
You can't stay here tonight. We ate all the shrimp. Sorry.
But it's a free meal. No,
That's
And I want to just say thank you, David and Robert, because you guys just do a wonderful job.
Oh, you're too
And,
kind. We're about to
they
thank
do, And they
you.
put up with me because I'm like a tough cookie. I really am.
Not with you.
And so I really want to thank you all because I
nice.
just really enjoy these forums.
Oh,
and
excellent.
so thank you.
Well, we do too. And thank you to the three of you. Sarah Saddlemeyer from Pew Charitable Trust, Denise Winston, you're author of It's Your Money, Avoid Costly Mistakes.
Correct.
And Michelle Singletary, author of the 21-Day Financial Fast, Your Path to Financial Peace and Freedom. Thank you to the three of you for hanging out tonight and
Glad
on
to
a
be here.
snowy evening.
And I want to thank everyone in the audience. Like, you guys were really good
Yeah.
sports and sharing all this. And I do have to say, it is actually really helpful. I know to the panelists on here and to us as financial reporters, people who report on economics and financial issues. Literally, like, the more stories we can hear about real life as it's lived and what people's real concerns are, the better we are at our jobs. And so, thank you all so much for doing this.
Thank you so much to all of you.